Today's presenter, a veteran community activist, Fagi Horowitz, MS, has spent decades in social services, both as an executive and as a board member of nonprofits. After several years in workforce development for Brooklyn job training agencies, she became the associate director of the Flatbush Haitian Center and then the executive director of the Crown Heights Jewish Community Council. Her portfolio expanded to a citywide focus in New York City and subsequently to a national focus at a children's charity. Fagi has a developmentally disabled brother and has served as a decades-long board member of the Brooklyn agency that took care of him, Makor Care and Services Network. She served on several boards of boutique and general social service organizations while living in Brooklyn, and now does so from Long Island. She is a co-founder of a shelter for homeless girls in Brooklyn, a community for midlife women called JWOW, and a synagogue. Fagi currently works for Caring Professionals, an FI fiscal intermediary, and LHCSA licensed home care services agency based in the Metro New York area as director of communications. She's been active in the Fair Pay for Home Care effort and writes about senior and caregiver issues. And she's a columnist for several periodicals. So without further ado, I turn it over to you, Fagi.
Hi, everybody. I think it's afternoon where most people are. So I'm welcoming you. And I really feel like I am part of the PSS community, and I'm thrilled to give back. I'm going to be talking about significant modifications in the home, not necessarily small scale changes. I'm going to be talking about changing layouts within a room, appliances, technology, and we're going to talk about things you may need a handyman for, an installer, or even a contractor to do. And before I tell you more about the planning piece, I want to tell you how I got into this. Shortly before COVID began, I remember reading an article in Long Island Newsday that I printed out. And it said that more and more seniors are choosing to stay at home. And there were these agencies, one connected with the local county department for the aging and the other that helps veterans to do modifications to allow them to live at home and not go further. Then once COVID hit and the horror stories about institutional settings for the elderly came out, I said, hey, more and more people are going to want to stay at home. And I had the time to train as a certified aging in place specialist with the National Home Builders Association, which gives these series of classes. And I trained in this. And while I don't go into people's homes and make recommendations, I have made many presentations, Zoom programs, and talks in person on this topic because it's something that I really relate to and I'm excited about. So it's all about planning and planning for a different or changed environment for when we get older includes and is appropriate for many kinds of people. I'm in the first category, people without urgent needs. 10 years ago, I slipped on a wet floor on my job and I broke my ankle. So I learned firsthand what I could do in my current home. I was able to get to the bathroom. The doorway was wide enough, but it's a two-part bathroom, and I could not get into the inner part because that doorway was too narrow. The shower wasn't bad. It had a seat, but it didn't have a grab bar. Then I fell I don't have a problem with falling, but this time it was something else. May 31st, I fell again. I was coming from the bank and there was a pothole in the surface of the parking lot. In other words, the owner of the strip mall had not filled in holes, and I tried to save myself, twisted my ankle. So what is my point? It's 9 years later, and we had done some changes in the house, so certain things were much easier. But I don't have urgent needs. We managed, and I managed in my kitchen much better because of this and certain things I learned about. I was very glad I have a kitchen table with a base. It's round and it has a base, so I could slide my wheelchair right underneath. I also had a better wheelchair, so I was able to get into the kitchen and go over the little threshold much more easily. But so I am one of the people in the first category, people without urgent needs. And thank God I am fully recovered. I am walking. I am resuming my other activities, even though I did have surgery this time, which I did not have the first time. Now, there are other kinds of people that have to consider making modifications. Those are people with chronic or progressive conditions, people in the second category. For example, somebody with Parkinson's or arthritis may need special modification to allow them to age in place. These people may already have needs for help with activities of daily living, such as turning on a light, a faucet, or bathroom changes. So that's the second category. Then you have the third category. There's with trauma, people who must make modifications because of traumatic change. They have a stroke, they have a major fall, they are become paralyzed. Before they come home from the rehab or the hospital, their family is going to have to make some modifications in the house. So again, that's not advanced planning, but that you do have to make some changes. And then there are people in the fourth category, people who originally had plans to go to an assisted living or to retire to Florida and be part of a senior community. But because of change in finance, because of changes in awareness of what things are all about, are choosing to stay at home. So why do people want to age in place? Next, all about quality of life. People want to stay at home because they want better quality of life. Now, and therefore, we want to protect them. You see these three categories, which we're going to talk about in a minute. Because they stay at home and choose not to go to a nursing home, an assisted living, a senior community, because they feel they will age better where they are. What is quality of life? Everybody defines it differently. There was a massive study, what they call meta-analysis, a study of studies of about 34 studies covering almost 4,000 people in 18 countries of the West. And basically, there were these 9 quality of life domains. Many of them are connected, but that's what quality of life means to people, being autonomy, right? We want to be able to cook and take care of ourselves, even do laundry, role and activity, continue to be the grandparent, the friendly neighbor, the leader of our congregation, health perception. We feel healthier when we are in our own space and we are not taken care of by a visiting nurse along with a whole bunch of other people. We can maintain our relationships, attitude and adaptation. We have the emotional comfort of being surrounded by things we've accumulated for many years and a place we're familiar with where everyone knows who we are. There's the spiritual piece, the home and the neighborhood. You're with people who know you, the corner grocery or the librarian. You've been going for book club meetings and you've been going checking books out there for years. You may have other relationships. You may tutor there. Our neighborhood institutions are very important to us. And of course, there's the financial security of being in your own home. You know what things cost, you know what the mortgage is, and so on. So the goal is supported independence for quality of life, which is any one and all of these 9 domains. So, like we said earlier, this is a repeat, but it looks a little different. Our, our goal in home modifications is to keep us at home so we can have quality of life. Our basic priorities are the first, life safety. So we can get out in case of a fire, right? Basic issues of life and death. Fall prevention is an obvious one because we all know that if you fall, it's the beginning of the end. Luckily for me, 9 years ago, and now when I am 65, the fall was not disastrous. And it doesn't come from osteopenia. There was a reason why I fell each time. But still, I'm much more aware. I just recently put a piece of painter's tape on a step, a place where I have one step. And I know it's there, but a lot of people come to visit. It's right near the entry, and they inevitably trip up. They don't expect to see a step there. So I put a piece of green tape there. And we also want, the third priority is we want to make it easier. Things that become difficult for us, we want to make easier to do the regular tasks we need to do, and the activities that we enjoy, our hobbies, cooking, taking pictures, watching television, whatever it is, photography. So, like we said, when it comes to safety, we want to have easily accessible exits during a fire. We want to prevent falls, right? We don't want to burn ourselves. Remember years ago, probably when some of us were growing up, I remember when I grew up, the stove had the knobs at the back. The burners were in the front and you had to reach across. That's very unsafe. You haven't seen a stove like that. But you're going to want to have cooktops with controls in the front so you don't have to reach across. If you have an electric stove, today's electric stoves are equipped with a little light that tells you when it's too hot to touch. In a kitchen, if you're the one doing the cooking, you don't want to have too far of a distance between the appliance where you prepared the food and the place where you're going to serve the food, from the stove to the dinette table, or from the crock pot to the bar area. By the way, most people our age do not love those breakfast nooks. They want to sit on a regular chair. Our balance is something we are concerned about. So what works for all these issues, life safety, fall prevention, and convenience, less so, is redundancy. Doubling up systems so that there is backup. In other words, if you have in the front entry, you want to have a light fixture with multiple bulbs so that if one burns out, then there's a backup. There's redundancy. There's extra. There's doubling up so that if one malfunctions, there's a backup and you're not in an unsafe situation. Similarly, anyone who's bought a smoke alarm, I thought I turned off the ringer. Sorry about that. Maybe I'll just turn the whole phone off. Power off. Okay, thank you. Smoke and carbon monoxide detectors these days both have visual and auditory alarms. I bought a few recently. They flash and it says, the light flashes when there is smoke, and it repeats again, there is smoke in region 1. There is smoke in region 1. There is smoke in region 1. And it gets louder and louder. So if we have trouble hearing, or we have trouble smelling, or we have trouble seeing, there's a backup system. There's another sense that will be engaged and we will be warned. Similarly, if there are hardwired alarm systems in your home, there's usually a battery powered backup. So again, that's redundancy. And also this is something people don't think about, so I'm going to mention it. When you have hazardous chemicals, let's say your partner likes to do woodworking and he's got, or she has some stripping chemicals to take the finish off something. So you're going to want to put that obviously high up so a kid or grandchild, a guest doesn't get to it. But you're also going to want to have, besides it being an inaccessible area, you want to put a big X on it or paint the cabinet a bright color and have a lock or latch on it. So that's a redundancy as well. The latch requires a motion to open it that's different than, let's say, your regular food cabinet or your other cabinets in your basement. So redundancy, doubling up is really important. Similarly, in some of those communication technologies, the ones for people who can't walk around or people with disabilities, there's two parts to it. You can call for assistance, right? And there's also they're monitoring you. If you don't respond or there is no motion every half hour, somebody's going to get a call. Traditionally, we all remember the monitoring systems were bracelets or necklaces. They gave the senior and his family peace of mind while the person lived independently. Today, these are incorporated into wireless systems like tablets and computers and laptops. And they can also, so that's a way of calling if there's an accident, and also a way, many of them require a periodic response from the wearer. So adult children or someone else can get a notification on the client situation and if there is an event of distress. Many of these, by the way, are portable. If you're going away for vacation or you're going to Florida for 2 months, you can take them along. Obviously, somebody needs to be tech savvy and understand how to do this. So if your kids are pushing you to get a bracelet or a necklace, and you see this as very demeaning, or your parent does not like the idea, research these multi-use electronic systems. They are really not expensive. And no, I am not going to recommend a particular one because they get updated. And the last time I looked was about 2 years ago. Now, just a little digression for a second. I think we have time for it. Having the conversation with one's parents is not always easy. It needs to be inclusive. It needs to be respectful. It cannot develop into a tug of war. That's why many people who are not as skilled or who are in the middle of this, of the parent having increasing number of infirmities and needing more help, of digging in their heels and being very resistant. So sometimes hiring a geriatric care manager who is a trained social worker or nurse who has studied and taken courses and passed an exam on geriatric issues will counsel and mediate. Geriatric care managers will do a lot of functions so to make it easier for the children, but they can also mediate. They have that psychological training and background. So our agency, Caring Professionals, does have a geriatric care manager on board. But if you're really skillful and read up and do some practice runs and really plan this out, you can have some useful conversations. Obviously, your parent has to be comfortable, so you'll try it out, and so on. One final word about systems, about these digital systems. The ones that monitor the parent or the senior also can have security integrated. In other words, you can get a comprehensive safety package with a monitoring system that will, lock all the doors and have sensors in different places. They can manage the lighting and the thermostat adjustment and can control locks. So really, in this area of life safety, technology can be very, very helpful. And it can also be helpful with, not as helpful with fall prevention. You have to get the cords off the floor. You have to remove the rugs. These are basic things. It's not home modification, but I'm just throwing that in there. And of course, technology can make it more convenient to do certain things. We'll talk more later. Now, this is really important. I'm a visual person, and this really strikes home. Sometimes when I go pay a condolence call or a Shiva visit, you see all the equipment and all the modifications they made in the house for the senior. And it's very jarring to come into a home that was previously dignified, and then you see there's wallpaper missing because they had to put in a railing up all the stairs, or they had to widen the doorway. When you make modifications, take the time and spend the money to make it aesthetically pleasing. Repaint the wall if you have to. If you put in a new door frame because you need to get the wheelchair through, paint it, stain it, do what you have to, make it look pretty, because otherwise it looks like an institution. And yes, that's not the first thing on your mind, but a person, I am having terrible luck here. I thought I turned my phone off. Power off. I don't know. So aesthetics are important. Keep the home attractive and avoid an institutional look. Now we're going to talk about several general areas of the home, and then we're going to go into a room by room discussion. So areas of the home, doors. We talked briefly about doors. Widening doorways is one of the first areas we talk about, because that's how you get from room to room. We want to be sure that there is enough clearance at knuckle height for wheelchair access and to maneuver. Not everybody is going in a straight line. You have to be able to come from an angle and be able to move at an angle. So widening the doors, or eliminating the doors and installing barn doors or sliding doors or even pocket doors is something to consider. Remember, and we're going to talk about this again, if you make the home easy to get in and out of, your senior will be more likely to leave the home and go to the library, go on an outing to the shoemaker, and then to have lunch in the luncheonette with a friend. If you make egress and entry easy, then the senior will be more engaged in the community around him or her and will age in place more successfully. There comes a time when, they're not going out as much in certain times of the year, like the winter, but the doorways are really important. By the way, this term knuckle height means the middle knuckle, the knuckle of the middle finger. And that's the height we use for installation of handrails and hand grips. Another general thing to be concerned about is sound. Now, most people don't really have a problem with sound. There's enough carpeting and upholstered furniture and curtains in a home to absorb sound. And we know that older people get a little, get hard, become hard of hearing, perhaps, or have limitations in their hearing. And therefore, they may turn entertainment sound up. For example, if the husband is used to watching football in the den, and the wife likes cooking in the kitchen nearby, it shouldn't be a problem. However, if there is a lot of glass tile in the modern kitchen that they built 10 years ago, then that sound is going to bounce, and it's going to be very disturbing to her because that sound is going to carry. He's turning it on very high because he's a bit hard of hearing, and he wants to watch the games. So you're going to have to consider that. Also, HVAC, heating, ventilation, and air conditioning may be old. And if you have central in particular that's old, it's going to make a racket. Consider that. You may want to change that. We also, and ventilation is part of that. It's not just sound. As we get older, we become more sensitive. We become allergic. We become more sensitive to smell. There's more of a likelihood of odor. So adequate ventilation is important. Not only quiet ventilation, but we need controls that are easier to use. They have to be big. Usually the contractor in a regular home will mount the thermostat higher than 48 inches. That's not what we want now. We want to be sure it's less than 48 inches so we can reach it from a scooter or a wheelchair. You want a large digital readout and simple up and down arrows. Similarly, controls. We're continuing on with controls. Electrical outlet should be about 24 inches, and the switches for lighting no higher than 48 inches, like we said before. Three-way switches are an excellent idea. Three-way switches, of course, are situations where the same lights can be turned on from two different places. So you're going out of your bedroom to the bathroom at night. You want to be able to switch on the light when you leave the bedroom. As soon as you go into the hall, you open the door, you switch on the light. But when you come home and you're heading towards your bedroom, you're coming from the outside, you want to be able to switch on that hall light from the entryway. So that's what we call three-way switches. Even though it's two places where there are actual switches, that's the term that's used. You want three-way switches at hazardous locations, in particular at the top and the bottom of the stairs, at either end of a hallway. We don't want people navigating an area in the dark. You even want motion sensors in a closet to turn, if they sense motion, they'll turn on the light. You don't want someone reaching up to pull the string down, the old-fashioned way we lit closets. Reaching and stretching are not what we want. Now, what you can do is have some of this set up to work remotely so that when you come home, for example, the garage door opens, the lights go on, the door gets unlocked. Again, you need systems for this, but you don't have to do it. We're trying to not only make it safe and accessible and well lit, but we're also trying to eliminate a lot of steps. I don't mean physical steps, a lot of things you have to do to come into the house and leave the house. It's it's a big deal to get out. Let's make it more convenient. So therefore, like we said earlier, entryway, to be active in the community, to go to the doctors and for social visits, you're going to want to have lighting. You want safe stairs. You're going to want to be able to put a package down and then get into the house, whether it's through a latch, through a key, a push button, and we'll talk more about that. So we need to have a mindset. It's not just one thing. Sometimes when we leave and we enter, there's a bunch of things that have to happen. So we're going to be especially aware that we want to make this convenient. And that takes us in a moment to entryways. But I see I didn't talk about lighting and glare. Most places don't have a problem with too much lighting. It's usually not enough lighting. Like we said, hallways, turns. Let's say if your hallway has a turn, you want to be able to see ahead and not bump into a wall. But some places, like in Southern Florida or Southern Exposure, or like my bedroom right now with windows on three sides, there's a lot of glare. I'm facing west. I have sun coming in from four windows. Is it too much for me? It's not. But if this were a different room with, let's say, a room with a mirror, then it would be a problem. Then it would be too much glare. So be aware of lighting, not only too little, but also too much. Okay, so we began to talk about entryways, and we'll connect it to thresholds and steps because that's how you get in and out. And we want to keep the person active in the community. So a very easy solution for people who are not so mobile is a ramp. But ramps do not have to follow code. So people land up getting a carpenter and installing a ramp, and it's not necessarily so safe. So a few things to think about when you're doing a ramp. You don't want the ramp too steep because then it's hard to get up. You need a landing. You very often need a place to stop and turn, change directions, or a landing at the bottom before you go to the ground or onto the porch. You want to have curbs so you don't fall off, and handrails. You also want the material to be non-slip in case it rains or snows or is damp. You don't want it to be slippery. And you also want a transition that is doable. So you should not have more. These are standard percentages or fractions. You don't want more than a quarter of an inch to go over from the bottom to the top or the top to the bottom. If the edge is beveled, if it's slanty, then you could do a half an inch. But normally a quarter, your transition at the top or at the bottom of the ramp should not be more than a quarter of an inch. And if it is beveled, a half an inch. You should also consider the lighting of the ramp. If you're using it to get in and out, this is not my day. Check the lighting. Make sure the transitions are good. You may also want to use different colors. So it's obvious where the ramp ends and where the next surface is. Like I said earlier, make it pretty. Now, how do you make a ramp pretty? Make sure it's stained or painted. You could put some planters near the top or the bottom, obviously not in places that block movement, but you definitely want to have You definitely want to improve it with aesthetics. So the final point about ramps is you probably want to cover them so you can get out during inclement weather. If it's going a long way, you're going to need a canopy, but it's a worthwhile investment. Otherwise, it's nasty outside. I don't want to leave. I don't want to go. And that's why when we talk about entryways, we also include a carport, a driveway. We want to consider what it's like for the older person during nasty weather. Maybe you'll start using a side door instead of the front door. You'll put the ramp there because the car can pull up. You visualize and think it through before you do anything, even semi-permanent. And like I said before, an entryway has more than one function, not just going in and out, but what are you doing when where you're coming from and where you're going to? You're coming from shopping, you're going to the doctor, you need a pocketbook, may have packages, you may have books, you may want to pick up the mail. So you don't want a mail slot at the bottom that the postman just thrusts in all the pieces of mail, and you come home, you open the door, and there's a bunch of stuff on the floor, which you're going to trip on. So you want to have a mailbox outside, usually on the right side, the same place where you're going to want to put a shelf or a chair so that you can put the packages down. Rest a little bit and then get ready to come in. Now, you want to have the easiest thing, and you don't have to do this right away, is not a key, but a lever. That's the easiest way to get in and out. People who have difficulty using a key might want to use a push button or a remote deadbolt. You press something on the phone and the deadbolt opens and you just turn the knob and in you go. Turning the knob seems like a simple thing for us, but for an older person, that's hard. If they have arthritis, if they had struggles with their hands. So you're going to have to think about what is the best way, and maybe what you have is adequate, but at some point you may want to use hardware that doesn't require twisting the wrist, and you can do it with one hand. Lever style hardware is the easiest, you pull it down. Now, I'm not going to really talk much about steps because we all know that steps are a big hazard. We want to make sure steps are dry, that the risers are closed. That's the area between, not like in my bedroom where we have a spiral staircase where it's open in between the actual steps. There are no risers. That makes it seem light and airy, but it's not so safe. After my fall, when I was able to put weight on it, I did not use those stairs. I used other stairs, wider with a handrail that wasn't so scary. By the way, I learned something, not when I trained for this. When you're using a spiral staircase, you're not going to fall more than four steps because of the angle. So if you do slip, you don't panic because it's not going to be a hard fall, most likely. Just one final word on steps. You want to have edges on the steps, like curved, like beveled or curved, so that the mobility aid, whether it's a walker or a four-pronged cane, does not slip. And you, of course, want continuous handrails. There's a lot of steps, or even 5 steps. You want a continuous handrail all the way up, not stopping after the first 10 steps. Now we are going to go to 2 main rooms of the house. Why are bathrooms the biggies? Why is it? Because the bathroom changes function. A bathroom in regular adult life is a place to pamper yourself, a place to add beauty, a place to store store things. At this point in one's life, a bathroom becomes a functional place where you do toileting, where you do bathing, where you do showering. It is not, and the functions are focused on the critical areas. You get rid of all the makeup. You get rid of the towels. Many people, when they do the home modification, one of the first things they do is take out the washer dryer or expand the bathroom into a nearby closet, because not only does the function change, but a bathroom is usually a small area. So you need to be able to maneuver. You need to have space in the bathroom area. You need to be able to come up close to the counter. You want to be able to reach. You want deeper toe kicks. We're getting rid of all the cleaning products and beauty products mostly, and we're going to have everything easily accessible. We want lower vanity heights so they can be used by a wheelchair user. And you also have to take into account when you're redoing a bathroom, and you can always hire someone like me, not me, because I don't do this, but I'm trained to do it, a certified aging in place specialist, someone who is a contractor with this training, someone who is an OT, an occupational therapist, very often do this training and will advise, because different people have different limitations. You may want to have a faucets with controls in the front. They may be remote. You stick your hand and the water comes down. You want to be able to monitor the temperature. You want to, in the drawers, you want them to pull all the way out so you don't have to stretch. And you want to have seated access to the toilet and barrier-free showers. Let's spend 2 minutes on showers. Today, many people purchase showers that will last them through different stages. And showers, just like bathroom, the toilet area, need to be thought of as a place not only to do the function, but you want to have dignity. If eventually someone's going to have an aide, you want the older person or yourself to have privacy and dignity, yet to be safe. So showers, obviously, the best thing is not to transition, to stay in one place and to use a chair. But you may not need that right away. And showers, obviously, if you have to step in, are a problem. You want curbless showers. You want an extra trench, an extra place for the water to drain, because you don't want the water flowing out and wetting the floor of the bathroom. So you're going to have a second drain, either a trench or a slope to the middle, and a slope so that the water runs to the middle and not out. Like when the teenagers were in the shower too long and they left the bathroom soaking wet because there wasn't enough blockage for the excess water. So if you're putting in grab bars near a toilet or in a shower or a railing, the biggest mistake everybody makes is they just install it from the outside. It has to be blocked. It has to have support from the other side of the wall. So you need a responsible carpenter to do this. It's not your 14-year-old kid who's just going to bang up, screw in some screws and a railing. No. You want to have the floor not tiled, really, because grouting is a problem. Grouting is a problem in the kitchen as well. You want a smooth surface, but not one that's going to become slippery. Okay? You're going to want to have cabinets, not closets, because closets need space for the doorways. Okay? And you're going to want to show the difference where the mirror meets the counter. If your vision is starting to become a problem, you're going to want to have like a piece of tape there or something to indicate the end of one surface and the beginning of another, which brings me to kitchens. One final word: the term for the shower that can be used as things change is called an adaptable shower. And you want an adaptable shower plan. Moving right into the kitchen, same idea. A kitchen used to be a place where everybody hung out, but because the food was prepared there, the meals were eaten there, the family gathered there. No. Um, um, Kitchens are a place where food is prepared, food is stored, food is served, and there's cleanup. So you want to be able to be safe. You don't want to reach over burners. You don't want a microwave on top of the stove. You want one of those drawer ones trust me, I have one in a drawer type of microwave, which my kids thought was crazy when we put in the kitchen about 8 years ago. Like, it's not what young people have, but it worked beautifully when I was in the wheelchair, 6 months ago. I could order something, put it in the microwave, and serve myself. So you want to be able to heat up food. You want to be able to cook with convenience. You want to keep the the foods that you cook with accessible. You may want to buy one of those grocery grabbers. If you have the funds, you'll set up your pantry with a lot of slide outs and roll outs so that you don't have to stretch. Remember, we said that sliding is much better than lifting because it not only doesn't strain, but it also gives you more control. When you slide, it's not force, so you have more control. Similarly, you want to have a wall-mounted sink with color coding, hot and cold. You want to have controls in the front. You want to have a lever because that's easy. You can do it with one hand. Um, um, you're going to want to have enough lighting, task lighting for where you do the food prep, where you do the cooking. You want ambient lighting as well. You want lighting where you sit. Well, let's say you read the paper. You're still reading paper, or you read your phone when you're eating breakfast. You want to have good lighting there as well. So the kitchen is an expense, but it allows an individual to be independent and have that kind of quality of life, taking care of themselves. If, however, there's going to be an aide in the house or someone else living with the senior, then you are going to have a discussion before you invest all that money or make these changes. Who's going to be doing the prep? Maybe the senior can't stand at the stove, but she likes to cut up her vegetables and make her salads, or she likes to shred the cheese for her gourmet salads. So this is more complex. But that's why I left these two for last, the bathroom and the kitchen. It takes a lot of discussion and a lot of thought and may involve a consult, but this is where a lot of the accidents take place, but it gives the person a sense of control to take care of their own toileting and food prep by themselves with some help. Yes, it's an investment. Yes, it takes planning and perhaps space changes and big modifications. But if you can do it, you should, rather than restrict the independence of the senior. I think I have a couple of minutes. And if not, you can email me, fhorowitz@caringprof.com. fhorowitz@caringprof.com. But now I'm going to turn to Jeff to monitor the questions in the chat or the Q&A.
Yeah, we have a lot of questions today. Any suggestions on how to accommodate for stairs or just move to a ground level dwelling?
Well, Well, one can put a bedroom and on the first floor. That's number one. A chairlift is not so horribly expensive. Medicare will not pay for it, but it's an investment, and you will be able to stay home. It'll cost in the area of 10. One of my neighbors just put one in for a rounded staircase. They spent the money and they had the space to do a bedroom on the first floor. He wanted his dignity, and I don't blame him. I don't blame him.
Our,
So there are other options. There are also elevators that are like a tube. A chairlift is not the only thing. If there are just imagine something going up and down. It doesn't take a lot of space like a staircase does because it's not on the diagonal. Those are more expensive though.
are senior buildings equipped with some of these accommodations?
Good question. Yes, and then they are retrofitted. If you're living in senior NYCHA housing or applying, there's some new ones I think opening in the Bronx. You have to be waitlisted and you have to be income eligible and so on and so forth. They do have some of this. Most of the apartments have elevators. The buildings have elevators. You're going to be on one floor. There's automatic doors, and there's those kind of facilities are designed for seniors. They have everything, and they retrofit. They bring in new technology as well.
But this question is, what material is slip proof for the bathroom?
Good question. A Pergo, it's called laminate. Laminate is good. Laminate has they're different kinds, of course. Laminate is artificial synthetic tiles that are fit together. It's like Lego pieces. And you can also take them when you move somewhere else. I had them in my previous home before I moved to this home. I did not land up taking them because they were nice floors here. Laminate is good. Or let's say the old-fashioned linoleum, which is not really used, but it's not slippery. And it can have a little bit of texture so you don't slip.
Well, thanks so much, Faggy. This was really informative.
I'll jump in with my email again.
Okay.
fhorowitz@caringprof.com.
Let me say once again, thank you to Faggy Horowitz, and thank you all for joining us today for this session. Have a wonderful afternoon. Take care. Bye-bye.
And come back to PSS and coming of age because they've got great programs.
All
My little
right.
plug.